Hey guys, so today we're going to start learning about an urban territory, specifically heritage cities. So our new unit is on heritage cities, and we're going to learn exactly what a heritage city is, specifically in terms of we're going to be looking at Quebec, and we're going to be looking at comparing it to the heritage cities of different cities around the world, specifically Beijing, which is in China. For Chapter 1, we are going to be talking specifically about Quebec City and how it is deemed a heritage city. And we're going to take a closer look at how urban territories basically have a high concentration of people, buildings, streets. And we're going to be exploring that of Quebec and what makes Quebec a heritage site. Okay? So, an urban territory. So, the definition of an urban territory, as you see here, is a space that includes a high concentration of people, buildings, and streets. Okay, so it's urban when it's basically city life. Okay, a lot of people, a lot of buildings, many streets. Many of these territories are recognized around the world for their exceptional cultural heritage. They are called heritage cities. So a city would be called a heritage city if it is found to be somewhat special, could be special for its historic aspect, could be for its outstanding beauty. We're going to learn about the criteria of what makes a city a heritage city as we go through this unit. So what is a heritage site? So, a World Heritage Site is a landmark which has been officially recognized by the United Nations, specifically by UNESCO, or as its full name is, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So we're going to be referring to it as UNESCO for the unit, but you guys will have to know what UNESCO actually stands for. So again, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It's a mouthful. What does UNESCO do? So, UNESCO's mission is to contribute to the building of peace and the eradication of poverty, so getting rid of poverty, sustainable development, which you guys already know what that is, and an intercultural dialogue through education, science, culture, communication, and information. So this is what UNESCO focuses on. It's part of the United Nations, and it focuses on this. So the next question is, how are sites chosen, and what happens once they're chosen? So when I say chosen, I mean chosen to be considered a heritage site. Okay? So there are three things here. Sites are selected on the basis of having cultural, historical, scientific, or some other form of significance. So it's only considered a heritage site if it's important in some way, shape, or form for these reasons. Once a site is chosen to be considered a heritage city by the United Nations, these cities are legally protected by international treaties. And UNESCO regards these sites as being important to the collective interests of humanity. So it's not just like any other city. So they see it as something that needs to be protected. Okay, so we're going to look at Chapter 1, which talks about a heritage city, specifically Quebec City. So I don't know if any of you have ever traveled to Quebec City. It's about 2.5 hours to 3 hours away. You've probably been to Old Quebec or Vieux Quebec, which is what we're going to be talking about in Chapter 1 specifically. This is the heritage city of Quebec. It's not the entire city of Quebec, but it's only Old Quebec or Vieux Quebec that is considered to be a heritage site worth protecting. So, questions that we will be answering by the end of the chapter. Why is Quebec a heritage city? What distinguishes Vieux Quebec's cultural heritage from other heritage cities? So what makes Vieux Quebec different from other heritage cities? Number 3, what are some of the problems that residents in this neighborhood are facing? And how can the built heritage of Old Quebec be preserved and restored? So these are questions that we're going to be answering by the end of the chapter. We're going to be answering them slowly. So terms to know, terms you should know as you're going through this unit. So number 1, cultural heritage. So it's the property, it could be an urban ensemble, site or landscape that is representative of a period in history that a society wants to protect, promote, or pass down to future generations. So cultural heritage is something that needs to be protected. A site. Now, I'm not talking about your eyesight. So a site is a place or area of land recognized for its geographic layout and its use by humans. Could be historic, aesthetic, economic, scientific, but it's any sort of site that is deemed important. Conservation, so when we're talking about conservation, we're talking about preserving a structure, a site, a piece of land from deteriorating. And when we're talking about restoration, we're talking about the actions taken to restore a property to what it once looked like. So when we're talking about restoration, restoring, it's basically taking action to preserve the historicity or the beauty of something. Okay, so these are the 4 terms you need to know, at least for chapter 1. Old Quebec. So Old Quebec has certain characteristics that are independent to Old Quebec, that are very special to Old Quebec. So first of all, it's the historic part of the city recognized by UNESCO for its cultural heritage. So if you've ever been to Quebec City, like I said before, not all of Quebec City looks old and very well kept, right? So Old Quebec is just a part of Quebec City. Municipal and provincial governments enforce laws to maintain the look and feel of the area. Many of the buildings were built after 1970, but they use the old architecture to maintain the heritage. It is also known as the cradle of French civilization in America. Okay? So it is also distinguished from other heritage cities in North America because it has preserved its ramparts and the citadel, which were built in the 18th century. So I'm going to show you exactly what the ramparts and the citadel look like. And there are over 800 archaeological sites in Quebec City that are worth seeing. So it definitely has a lot of history, a lot of heritage in that one small city. So, just to tell you what a citadel is, it's a fortress typically on high ground protecting or dominating a city. Okay, so if you've ever been to Old Quebec, you will probably have visited the citadel and have seen the ramparts. So the rampart is a defensive wall of a castle or a walled city, having a broad top with a walkway. So the citadel sits on top of the ramparts. It's one part, and if you've ever been, you'll notice that it's protected by grass. Okay? So here, as you guys can see, if you look where there's purple, you can see where it says citadel. And this sits on top. You have to kind of walk upwards to get to the top of the citadel. And it's all grass, as if there's a fortress built, and this was built for wartime, so that people who wanted to invade Old Quebec, they weren't able to see the people hiding and watching them coming. So it's a fortress that they built for war, basically. And the rampart is everything surrounding Quebec City. So if you notice, everything in purple, all the lines from the citadel and around the city, that is the rampart. So that's the protective wall that surrounds the city. It used to be there for war. Now it's there as a cultural site. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like in photographs. So Quebec City and the citadel. So here at the top, you'll notice that the protective wall and the grass, that is the citadel. And then all of the walls looking like a barrier of Quebec City, those are its ramparts. So let's take a closer look. So this is actually a picture of Quebec City taken from the inside of the citadel. So you'll notice that they have little protective, it's a wall, and they have places where they could see through to the city so that they could see the enemies coming if they needed to. You can also walk along the ramparts and the citadel. So you see that there's graffiti there. That would be a huge fine if they caught you like creating graffiti on Quebec's citadel. You can see all the cannons. And they've also preserved this and enlarged the citadel the ramparts, so that cars can actually go through it. Because at the time when they built it, they didn't need these wide streets like they do now. So they had to actually enlarge this. Okay, and we're going to stop there for today. So we're going to turn to our questions and kind of review what we just went over. All right, thanks guys.